What's up, you guys? Welcome back to LA Show. Thank you guys so much for tuning back in with me. Today we have Cisco here. And, Cisco has this wonderful series that we're going through step by step. And it's just good information, great information. How are you today, Cisco?
Oh, I'm great. I'm great. And thank you for
Good.
having me back on.
No problem, of course. The series is almost done. We have a couple more points to make after this one, and those are going to be some really good key points as well. But today we're going to talk about the media's marketing of Black Death. What's up with that, Cisco?
Well, this is a really old thing. And I think I've mentioned this in other videos, but I'm gonna do it again for those people who like to read, and I encourage you to read, especially in this age of this digital age, which is shortening our brain and our attention span. But I would refer you to two great books. One of them is a heavy reading book, and that's Mass Media and Politics by Doris Graber, and the other one is The Entertainment of Politics by Michael Parente. Um, why I preface what I'm going to talk about with that is because this is a long, ongoing thing, especially in light of current events. We've been seeing a lot of different uh, mysterious deaths, some, these hangings or lynchings that are being ruled as suicide. We're seeing the George Floyd, the Trayvon Martin, Michael Brown, and all the others. They basically um, devalue in all of the public's eyes, no matter who you are, uh, devalue Black life, and it normalizes the fact that young Black males in particular, but that doesn't exclude females as well, and children, that their lives become devalued by over sensationalizing some of these deaths and these unsolved murders. Um, and in light of the protests, I want to look at how CHOP or Chaz, whatever you want to call it, and other Black Lives Matter protests has also emotionalized Black people to fall in line with Black Lives Matter. And if you don't know who they are, I just like you to refer you to the other video on LA Show where I clearly um, summarize basically who they are and what they're trying to do. Um, but really, you have an organization that really doesn't, they have the claim of Black Lives Matter. And that is something that triggers emotion in Black people, especially when we've seen some kind of travesty or a miscarriage of justice in a Black person's life. So that emotionalizes, that triggers society to get behind the banner of Black Lives Matter. In in meaning, it's no different than in the 60s. It was Black Power. And what happened to the Black Power movement? The socialists came in, the feminists came in, the anti-war came in, the free sex and get high came in, and now we're in another era where the organization is using that same methodology of tapping into our emotions of having concern and having the want and the need to change how police interact with us, and now all these other agendas are and organizations' agendas. You know, along and every Black Lives Matter protest, there have been Antifa, there have been Boogaloo, Proud Boys, Black Bloc, and other groups, even undercover police officers uh, that have been part of those protests. Now, the next thing I want to segue into is how fake news is promoted on social media to muddy the real facts and further emotionalize you. And the reason why I added that to this particular topic was because of how many stories I was seeing and sharing with LA, and then I would cross reference what was on the post, and it was just totally false or manipulated. It was like photoshopped, and all those things are. And then you got people just running with stories, and they're not even the real the real truth about those things. Part of that is a technocratic agenda, and that's a whole another long drawn out talk. Uh, but I'll touch on some of it. Part of that is, and you can search these terms, is they are studying people, sentiment analysis. They are um, you think that you're finding things organically on social media platforms, and they're actually not organic. They're feedback loops. You know, there's so much going on social media. And as I mentioned, going back to the Black Lives Matter, I mentioned one of the founders of Black Lives Matter. She's the in charge of the strategy on social media. So what I've found in just analyzing what I see on different social media platforms is that a lot of people that don't even know the reality of Black Lives Matter are using that terminology and defending the organization without knowing its reality. And that's real dangerous. And it's real dangerous coupled with how some of these fake news stories, and they're not totally fake, it's just they've changed the facts. It's just like, I'll give you one
Mm-hmm.
example on the George Floyd. You might have seen, and I'm not saying that the whole story is wrong, but there's the story about the attorney that allegedly defended George Floyd in a case. Well, in that post, which you can't find that Facebook page, okay? Was it taken down? Was it deleted? I don't know. But if you read it carefully, it says 1989. Now, if it was 1989, then now we have to question the age of George Floyd. It throws the whole story. So then now that's what I mean about muddying the waters. And I'm not even
There's
saying
another.
that I'm not even confirming the original story. But what I'm saying is, if you remember, if you going back to the Nipsey case, I always told you a fact is something documented. Fact doesn't mean truth all the time. When you're doing investigation, even in the court of law, truth ain't always what wins. It's what you can prove. So when I say the facts, sometimes I'm not talking about whether or not it's truth, it's whether or not you can really concrete pin it down to be documented. Something
Mm-hmm.
documented on this date by this author by such and such, such and such. And that's what I mean. This is one case where you cannot really confirm whether or not unless you contact the lawyer, because the page is down, the numbers, the age doesn't match. And then I'm not even going to get into the George Floyd thing because that's a whole weird story altogether. And the last point, and then I hope that some of these points me and LA can discuss before we close. But the last thing, I just want you guys to look at the whole timeline and timeline of events and the aftermath of it. Look at it from afar. So I look at George Floyd plus BLM or Black Lives Matter plus Trayvon Martin plus Black Lives Matter plus Michael Brown plus Black Lives Matter equals nothing. We're still in the same position. And that's why I say there is no real gain from protesting or falling into organizations, movements, and protest demonstrations, whatever you want to call it. There is no real gain from that. In fact, if you look at Chaz or Chop, what happened in Seattle, there was more Black lives killed there. And if you seeing the what's happening all over the country, in Chicago, in Atlanta, in Florida, still Black lives is dying. So this is what I'm saying. Ultimately, the end game equals the end result equals nothing. And coming together with with organizations like Black Lives Matter is going to open you up to a whole lot of madness, in my opinion. And like I say, if you're doing your research, people are getting arrested behind their participation in these incidents. Innocent children are being harmed. So what I'm saying is all of this is devaluing, in my humble estimation, is devaluing Black lives at the end of the day. And it stems from the media, streams on down through all the social media platforms. Throw in there some fake news and some muddying of the water, muddying of the real facts. Then you have all these opportunistic organizations that are really having the big hand, the big hidden hand behind them, with the big money that are funding people that don't have Black people's best interests. And that's all I have to say.
Okay. Okay. Well, I totally understand where you're coming from, because I had to take myself out of the emotional side of seeing what I saw with George Floyd, hearing what I've heard about um, Breonna Taylor's murder. Like you said, men and women and children are being affected by, this plague of police brutality. I had to take my emotions out of it because it's a bigger picture. And we already explained that in our last series of all angles, is what I'm going to call this, because this is us basically coming together and putting in all angles of the pot and just stirring it around and seeing what is coming out of this stuff, the final product of this stuff that we're seeing. Now, like you touched on with the whole um, emotional side, you also discussed the desensitive. What is it? Not being sensitive. I was about to mess that word up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
So you talked about
desensitized.
that. Yeah.
Right.
That is a situation where I see that we're we're building a new society, because back in the day we didn't have the media that's this strong to where I can open my phone up every day and see Black men getting shot in the back, getting shot here, getting shot up there. So it's a lot more of that. We are really breeding a new society. And that's where you touched on with the technocrats as well. So I appreciate that. Um, so social media muddying the real facts about featured cases. That is true. They do that. They can spin a story and they can make you believe whatever they want you to believe. And that's why, Cisco has always been about doing your own research. You know, People are so ready to jump on bandwagons. And I can see that even with me having this small platform. You know, we don't want you to take
Right.
everything we say as fact. We want you
Right.
to go out there and double check us, and check us if need be. That's
Right.
fine. Do it in a respectful way, but you know, it is what it is. The internet, people think that it's a game on the internet, and we're going to talk about that in another series of this all angles, and I'm so ready to get to that one as well. Um, the Black Lives Matter movement. Getting behind certain movements, they're going to make you move in a certain way that they want you to move. That's why it's called a movement. So somebody is basically pulling strings. And from what I read on the website, these strings that are trying to be pulled doesn't sound too good. You have women out here and babies out here, like you said, getting hurt at these protests alongside men. A statue fell on a guy. A statue fell on a guy at a protest. Um, it Baby Sequoia, come to find out, her death was behind her mom trying to get home and crossing a barrier to what sounds like some privatized security at that spot. Because
And there
why would you shoot somebody for driving around a barrier if you're not the police or some type of security team? But
and they are there, privatized and military and police. They're there. You just don't see them.
mhm.
There's ones that you ain't gonna see. They're gonna be in windows, on top of buildings, in cars that cars that you ain't paying attention to. They out there.
Mhm. Mhm. So I'm just, reverting back to what you have said about all of this. It's a lot of strings that are being pulled, and people are being pushed into thinking a certain way. Do
Yes,
I
they're
believe in
not
the
thinking for
statement Black
themselves.
Lives Matter? Yeah, they don't think for themselves. Now, do I believe in the Black Lives Matter statement? Of course, of course. But do I also want to counter this organization that is causing most of this chaos? Yes, I do. Because now we're getting that organization, not the slogan, not the statement, painted on different parts of America. What's behind that? How is that helping me as a Black person if my Black life matters? You know, so it's just certain things that are just we got to pay attention to. The
And
media's marketing of Black death.
you can take and you can go and see on YouTube interviews of people who were paying attention to what was happening at Chop and Chaz. Even the alleged warlord has an interview that I would encourage all of you to listen to. The whole and I don't support that guy. I'm actually have a whole opinion about that dude. But I'm not getting into that right now. But what the point that I want to make is how the initial cause gets muddied. The initial cause of the protest was George Floyd, police brutality. And then it went from that to gay rights, tranny rights, defund the police, outlaw, I mean, or totally disband the police. I mean, it went on from all kind of different movements, all kind of different things. And that's
Right.
and that's exactly what I'm all of that at the same time, and black blood is still spilt on the concrete.
Yeah. And they're
And
going
I
to
and
continue.
that's not for y'all your other listeners. I'm not saying that to devalue anybody else's blood either. So I just want to
Right.
throw that out there. I'm just saying in light of the Black Lives Matters cause, black blood is still on the concrete.
And that's what I also want to bring up with these, marches with these different militia groups as well. We see these areas that are being detrimentally affected by this gun violence. Somebody needs to march around these areas with some guns and show these
Eh,
boys that are out here doing whatever they're doing that, hey, you take a life, you know, something's going to happen to you. Because in these areas, such as Chicago, I mean, all those kids that got murked on July 4th weekend, that is crazy. That is crazy. There is no excuse for that. Stray bullets flying around neighborhoods and stuff, and you want to tell me that Black Lives Matter. I don't get it. I don't get it. I think this is um another psyop, you know. It's just you're playing with people's minds at this point, because if my life matters, then why, like Cisco said, why is blood still falling from my people? It's just it's really messed up. It's really messed up. A mental mind game. And that, I just can't wait till we get to the social media part of this. So is there anything else you have to say?
no, not at all. I'm good.
Okay. Well, you guys tune in to the next series of All Angles, and also check out the last series where we did a critical analysis on the protests that are going on. That was another good one. And, we're going to come back soon with the first wave of the CV, the second wave, protest slash purge, third wave, question mark. So basically we're just questioning what's going on with the CV. I know that's something we haven't talked about in a while, but as I explained in my podcast, one of the videos got taken down, and you know how YouTube is. Thank you guys so much for tuning in and listening to me and Cisco today. We'll be back with more.